Mm, okay. First of all, we want to welcome you, Jonas, who
Thank
accepted to
you.
have this conversation with a group of students and teachers of the southernmost country in the world. And we also want to greet the school principals, teachers, and students who have accepted our invitation to take part in this talk. Uh, to let you know, the students who attended the fifth year in 2019 read a corpus of novels that dealt with characters marginalized by either poverty or madness. After the most famous madman, Quixote, we read a book by you named The 100-Year-Old Man Who Climbed Out the Window and Disappeared. From that and working groups, we began to put together an online timeline in which we added the main plot of the novel, and we were and we we were marking in the map the spots where all these events happened. We sent this work to you, and from that contact arose the idea of organizing this meeting today. We found that English could be a common language, so we will be talking in a language that's not native to any of us. And we'll start with a short and synthesized presentation of your biography and work. And after that, we'll begin with some questions we have prepared for you.
Una pestaña Chrome. I don't know if you can see the presentation now.
There it is.
Well,
There I am. Fantastic.
well, Jonas was born the 6th of July of 1961 in Mekwek. I don't know if I pronounce it right. In Sweden. He went to the Gothenburg University to study to be a journalist, and then he decided to write, as we know. And nowadays he's well known of his four books: Hitman Anders and the Mean of Italy, The 100-Year-Old Man Who Climbed Out of the Window and Disappeared, The Girl Who Saved the King of Sweden, and The Accidental Further Adventures of the 100-Year-Old Man. And now we start with questions.
Okay, with that short presentation being said, is there anything you want to add relating to that? Nope. Okay, let's get started. We read in your biography that you started your career working as a journalist for many years until you quit and decided to start writing. As we don't usually rely on the internet very much, is that true? And in that case, do you think that your experience as a journalist influenced your way of writing fiction?
Uh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you could say that my career started, that is a career as an author, started more or less at your age, in the sense of that I can tell you a story. It was in high school. It was by the end of a lesson in Swedish language, and the lesson was over, and the students started to leave the classroom, and then my teacher, she said, "Hey, Jonas, could you stop for a minute? I need to talk to you." And I was thinking, "Uh-oh, what did I do now?" But it was nothing like that. She said, "I'm wondering, what are your plans for college?" I had no plans for college. So I said, "Well, I guess that I will study economy as my two elder brothers." And she said, "No, I don't think you should. You are a great writer. You could be author or journalist. Go for that," she said. So Cecilia, the teacher, made difference. She really pushed me in the right direction, and maybe since then I consider myself being an author. However, after university, I started with the journalism instead. And to answer your question, it has for sure the 30 years or 25 years within journalism has for sure affected my style of writing. For one thing, I had an editor-in-chief when I worked for the largest daily in Scandinavia, and he said to us, the reporters, write short or don't write at all. He really wanted us to cut out all not needed letters, just to stick to the essence of everything. And I've been thinking about that. If you take a closer look at my writing, it is rare that I, for one thing, describe the look of a person. I leave that to the reader. We don't even know whether Allan Carlson is thick or thin, tall or short. Luckily, when I saw him in the movie, I said, there he is. Obviously, I didn't know myself, but I recognized him when I saw him. Also, when you take a closer look into my writing, I never use half a page to describe a sunset or a dawn or even emotions. When I quote somebody, I just quote him and I leave to the reader to figure out what the person in question was feeling when he said it. I also don't use exclamation marks. I think that if a sentence is strong enough, then you don't need the exclamation mark. If the sentence is not strong enough, then an exclamation mark doesn't help. Yeah, and in front of all, I needed all those years of journalism. I needed to get the self-confidence to write a story how I wanted it to be without pretending to be somebody else.
Well, in your books, main characters are not what we would consider as a traditional heroes. They are mostly outside of the law or society, and there are gang members, a crazy old man, a illiterate girl from a third world country, among others.
Mm.
Is that your purpose, or does it just casually happen?
You know, in real life, there are people collecting stamps. I collect interesting people, interesting personalities. It is almost on a daily basis. Just the other day, I happened to watch a TV documentary, Swedish TV documentary, about a Swedish man who never played football. He never played football, but he always wanted to be a goalkeeper. And he was like 70, 75 years old. And he still had this dream of being a goalkeeper. And one day in this little village of South Sweden, he met another guy about 70, 75 years old. And they started to talk. And the other guy said, I never played football either, but I always wanted to be a striker. So the two of them, just the two of them, they started to play football. One of them goalkeeper, the other one a striker. And 75 years old, winter or summer, snow or rain, uh, they were out on the field, saving goals or making goals. Uh, of course, two a little bit crazy guys, but I just love them, and I put them in my heart as part of my uh, collection of people. But I never use any of these real people. I take a little bit from different angles, and I create my own characters, like the illiterate girl from Soweto in South Africa. A part of her is, including her surname, Majeki. Part of her is taken from a friend of mine, Wuji Majeki, who lived in a township outside Cape Town. And she, without any how do you say it in English? She really didn't have anything. Um, she had no help from anywhere. Nevertheless, she studied, and she got a career, and so and still, which is exciting, she still lives in the township, because the township is still in her heart, but mentally she made it. And this friend of mine, she inspired me to create the character of Lombepo Majeki. Meeting these odd people, interesting people, always give you perspectives. And if you add an interesting story to that, then you have one of my books, I guess.
Well, that's actually really amazing. Thank you for sharing. What we receive in Argentina out of Swedish literature consists mostly of crime and detective novels. And your novels, on the other hand, have an important amount of humor. They have like a different focus. Is that style of humor a tradition there in Sweden, or do your books constitute more of a break from an establishment?
Now, the tradition is what the Italians call gialli. Um, what do you call it in Spanish? It's noir in French. Doesn't matter. The Do you know about the Millennium Trilogy? About this girl, uh, Lisbeth Salander. It is this Swedish author, Stig Larsson. He wrote 3 books, the Millennium or Millennium Trilogy. Gave it to a publishing house and died. After his death, the Millennium was published and sold millions and millions of copies, became Hollywood films and everything. And this Millennium Trilogy, it peaked shortly before I made my debut, and when I started to become international in 2010. So this Stig Larsson author, colleague of mine, he was of a great help to me, since journalists all over the world, they thought it was so interesting that an author from this dark country of Sweden, where they only write about killings and desperation and suicides and homicides and everything, how is it possible that there can be at least one guy, Swedish guy, that is not suicidal. And so because of this Stieg Larsson, after his death, I became the most interesting guy to interview in that sense. Now, the typical Swedish thing is really crime novels. I am an exception, and after me, for sure, and always before you are never first in anything. But after me, other have tried and succeeded too. I mean, certainly writing a picaresque, there was at least one guy before me. His name is Cervantes.
Thank you so much, Jonas. Which authors do you recognize as a strong influence in your writing style and any language perspective?
Okay, I think I can blame you for not making my debut like 30 years earlier. I will explain. You know, I studied Spanish at the university some 35 years ago. I read at the time, you know, as part of the studies, plenty of Spanish and Latin American literature in original language. But then, 22, 23 years old, when I tried to write my own first novel, I was too influenced by Garcia Marquez, Vargas Llosa, Ernesto Sábato, Isabel Allende, and others. So this Latin magic realism is not too far from the description of my odd characters, for sure. But you know, when you mix a 23-year-old Jonas Jonasson with Vargas Llosa and Garcia Marquez, then I can tell you, you get shit. Nobody could. I never let anybody read it. It was pretentious and lousy. So, as I said before, I really needed those years in journalism to create my own self-confidence. And one day I was ready to write a story exactly the way I wanted it to be, the way I wanted to read it myself. I really could leave Garcia Marquez behind. He's great. He's the greatest. But lucky for him, he's not me.
Okay.
Okay. But, one of my specialities is not to answer the question. If I had to pick one book, it might be a book you haven't heard of, I don't know, but there is a Czechoslovakian author, or was a Czechoslovakian author. His name was Jaroslav Hasek. He wrote a novel named The Brave Soldier Schweik. And the brave soldier Schweik, he was active in the World War I, and this humoristic and crazy character, you never knew whether Schweik was the stupidest person of all during the First World War, or if he was the one and only who really understood what it was all about. And I have many times been thinking, like, that could be my Allan Karlsson. we are not sure. Is he the stupidest, or is he the one and only? So No, I can't say that I have no direct sources to my writing, but for sure there are similarities.
Okay, that was like hilarious. But the next question is pretty much related to something you already said. We know that besides Swedish, you speak English, but you also studied Spanish in Gothenburg.
See,
Why did you choose Spanish in particular?
because at college I had a fascist Spanish teacher. I don't know if he was fascist, but he was mean. I really disliked him, and I said to myself, you could say first I decided to move to Gothenburg to study, to check whether I could make university level two, and when that was decided, I had to pick a subject. So I picked the subject Spanish, and later on Swedish, and Spanish to prove to this mean possible fascist that I could speak Spanish better than him. Unfortunately, a year and a half later, when I made it, he was already dead. So I never got my revenge. But that was, in fact, the reason. I was kind of fluent in Spanish like 35 years ago, but it's far, far away now. I still understand written Spanish quite well, but that is all.
Well, thank you so much. It was awesome. I had to say. Now we're going to make you some questions regarding to the 100-year-old man who climbed out of the window and disappeared. That is a novel
Mhm.
we read last year. And here's the first one. Alan Carson is a man who doesn't seem to be conscious of his role in the history, in the world's history, nor the evil he has done or the deaths he has caused. Did you think of this characteristic as a symptom of a pathology, or is it just a way of generating humor, or does have an intention of making a criticism?
It is good that you noticed that Alan Carlson is far more than just a funny guy. That it's even important to see it that way. I mean, Alan Carlson is a dangerous man. He's a political idiot, and now and then I get the question, "Oh, is there a part of Alan Carlson in you?" And I said, "God, no. I really hope not." Uh, he is neither good nor evil. He just is, and that is the character. Exactly the character I needed to work as a guide through a whole century, the 20th century. Century. Um, I have been traveling a lot due to my writing, and I can tell you about two meetings with journalists. One a few years ago in Spain. It was a journalist from País Vasco, severely, seriously asking me how could I let Alan Carlson save the life of General Franco. And then just last autumn, I went to Tokyo, and there a Japanese journalist asked me how on earth could I allow Alan Carlson to create the atomic bomb. Of course, the País Vasco journalist had historical reasons to ask the question about Franco, and the Tokyo journalist had his reasons to ask me about the atomic bomb. The answer is that Franco did exist, and what he did, he did. The atomic bomb still exists, no matter how stupid it is. and what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki still happened. They are both two inevitable examples of the shortcomings of mankind, and we should not blame Allan Carlson for it. I use humor to reach out with my message, and the message might be, can we please learn from history, if just a little bit? And I have sent that message to millions of readers already, and I can tell you, so far it didn't help.
Well, in the book, there are a few governments that make like a bad impression. For example, we have the case of corruption in Indonesia as a chronic issue. Did you have any problem in that respect?
Yes, when I wrote the follower up to the 100-Year-Old Man, the accidental further adventures, then I must admit that through my agent, we contacted my South Korean editorial house, and we asked them something like this: that, you know, Jonas is not too kind against Kim Jong-un in North Korea, and he's not too kind to President Trump in United States. What about Kim Jong-un? Will he freak out when this book is out in South Korea? And the people from the publishing house in Seoul said, "Nah, he's kind of busy with other stuff than bothering about Jonas Jonasson." So that was worrying me a bit. But I was never worried about Donald Trump, because I know for sure that he doesn't read books. Did you die?
I'm sorry. I can't keep going.
I wasn't expecting that. uh, eh, well, thank you so much. Continuing with this book, we know that the movie was made out of the book, and we want to know if you were somehow involved in the script or in the production of the movie.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't at the time. I remember handing over the book to the director, and I wished him good luck. I'm quite happy with the result. I would say, if you ask me, the film is maybe more of humor and less of reflection. That might be due to the way of communicate. There's a difference between books and films. I don't know, but I'm still happy with the result. What happened in the future, I don't know. There is you know, changes in people's behavior. I just heard from my editorial house that my next coming book is expected to, when it comes to sales in Sweden only, it is expected to be 60% audiobook and 40% traditional reading book. So people's behavior in consuming media and literature is changing. It is, and we are multitasking many times. We are making the dishes in the kitchen while listening to a book. So but I'm thinking like this, that a good story, and if you have something to tell, then there will always be room for you. But will it be in the form of a book, of an ebook, of an audio book, or a TV series, or a film? I don't know. I'm a little bit curious of trying to write manuscript in the future. We'll see.
Okay, thanks for sharing. The narrative structure goes on in two opposite directions. On the one hand, you present Alan's story of when he escapes from the nursing home, and on the other hand, you reveal his life story. Going back and forth in time can make it pretty confusing. How did you manage to make that clear for the readers?
When when I was done with the first draft of the 100-Year-Old Man, I had every two chapters I switched from history time to present time. Every second chapter I went back and forth, but that felt confusing even to me. So I decided that, okay, if I am in present time, I stay there for a while until it feels like a natural move to historical times. So I don't remember now, but let's say it's like 2 or 3 chapters present time, and then I change to historic time, 2, 3, 4, 5 chapters, and then maybe 1 or 2 chapters only present time. I switched between them when it felt natural for the story, and I am quite sure that it helped the reader a lot. Over the years, I have had only one reader meeting me during a book festival, commenting this, and he said, "Oh, Jonas, I love your books. I love your 100-Year-Old Man." He said, um, "First I read the historical parts, and then I went back and I read the present part. It was great," he said. And I was thinking, "Hey, you stupid. You're not supposed to read the book like that. If you were supposed to read it like that, then I would have made it like that." So please don't read it like that. Let he be the only one.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. Now we are going through the final question.
Okay.
That we have been told that you're about to present a new novel, and we were wondering if you can tell us a little bit about the plot, and if you know when it will be published in Spanish.
Okay. My next novel has an English working title as Sweet, Sweet Revenge Limited. Hämnden är ljuv AB in Swedish. You could say it is a love declaration to free art, of course, with my glimpse in the eye. And as we were talking about before, I have the basic storyline, and I add interesting characters. In this case, I add an African medicine man. If you take an African medicine man in his shuka and put him in Stockholm, Sweden, in February when it's 15 degrees minus, then things happen. I have this medicine man, I have this entrepreneur who starts the business, the revenge business. Come to me, pay me, and I give you legally revenge to the guy you want to have revenge on. Then we have this young couple in an urgent need for revenge. We have two paintings. I mean, it was an art story, right? We have two paintings with highly unclear value. Are they worth $1,000 each or maybe $1 million each? And who owns them? And finally, we have this, the bad guy. There must always be a bad guy. We have the art dealer, the one who everybody wants revenge on. And all this sounds humoristic, and it is, but with highly serious background thought of that freedom of art is until this day threatened here and there, in Hungary, in Poland, in Brazil, and we mentioned this guy in Washington. He tries his best to silence, if not art in the first place, but media in general. If you censor art, it is a very small step to start censoring the written word too, and that is the bitter taste of the sweet revenge limited. It will be out in. I'm not all the way updated. It will be out in August in Holland, in the Netherlands. It will be out in September in Sweden, and I think other Scandinavian countries. In October, the huge market of Germany, and at least earlier, I think the Italians, French, and also in Spanish, they planned late autumn, but I'm not updated due to this Corona thing, which you might have heard of. Everything is or can be delayed and for sure unclear. For one thing, I have several flight tickets already booked to different countries due to the launch of my new book, and most probably I won't use any of them. But we are proving here today that video conference works fine too.
It does, and well, the story seems pretty interesting. I'm pretty sure I'll give it a try. Well, that was all we had prepared for today. I don't know if we have enough time to let the other guys ask some questions.
Absolutely.
Okay. Then, if anyone wants to ask something, they should announce themselves in the chat, maybe, so that we have like a more clear order. I don't know what the teachers think about this. No sé si les parece que nos anunciemos en el chat para hacer las preguntas, si tenemos tiempo.
¿Alguien quiere hacer alguna pregunta? Si no, podemos ir cerrando. Ok, bueno. Saludamos entonces.
Veo que no. Well, then, yeah, then, as a way to finish, we just want to thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much.
We have never thought of having the chance of speaking to a writer in a different language and in a different place. So it was really interesting. Thank you for taking the time, and thank the teachers and all the students who wanted to take place. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
All the best to all of you. I have on my list to go to Argentina, but we'll see when it will be.
Okay.
Maybe we meet there.
We will be waiting for you here.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a nice day.
Bye,
Thank
thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Ciao, Jonas.